This episode of The Ready Room is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek FM at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, this is Michael Dorn, Lieutenant Commander Worf from Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and you're listening to Trek FM.
Welcome to The Ready Room, show number 225, Monty Python's Contractual Obligation album. I'm Christopher Jones, and with me today is Larry Nemecek. In this episode, we look back at the full season of Star Trek Picard, share our feelings on the story and creative work, and discuss what the first season's success means for the broader Star Trek franchise. We also take a first look at the recently announced Captain Pike series, Strange New Worlds. So let's step into the Ready Room. Well, Larry, here you are still in the Ready Room after all this time. I guess you've probably been in here doing all your Picard screenings, but one thing makes me really curious. Is it really you, or is this Golem, Larry, that I'm looking at right here?
I'll never tell, Chris. I'll never tell. Excuse me. It's been so long since we've done this. I'm going to dust off a little Stardust City Stardust here off. And yeah. No, this is, I've missed being on the mic with you, Chris. This is wild. I can't believe how long it's been.
It's been a long time, and you look younger than ever and refreshed and vibrant. And so I just thought that maybe, you had been put into a new shell, just like JL Jean-Luc Picard has been.
Oh, no. How kind of you to say that. There must be something wrong with this, whatever the hell application I'm in today. There's only 5 things floating around here. Boy, I feel like I've been more through the ringer the last 2 or 3 months than ever. What's amazing to me is when Picard started in January, it's like we were in a different, it's like we jumped in a red matter black hole and came out the other end of an alternate universe or something, because we had parties, we had view parties, and kicked off, and then by the end of like 10 episodes, we're not talking 26 or 15 even. 10 episodes later, everybody's watching it from underneath their desks. It's like it's the middle of an earthquake or something, or a tornado, and we're all hunkered down, bunker hunkered. So anyway, I don't think it's had a long-lasting impact on the way people look at the series, but I don't know how anyone can ever forget the first run-through of Picard, like where it started and where how it ended up. But we've certainly had time for it to filter down and think about it.
I think I tweeted on Friday when I was watching back through Picard to refresh a little bit for this, that hearing the theme music was kind of nostalgic for me because it brought back memories that are only about 3 or 4 months old, but it feels like they're 3 or 4 years old, because I finally got out yesterday and actually went somewhere for the first time since March 25th. And when Picard was airing in first run, I was watching the new episode each week while I was riding the train going back and forth into Tokyo, because people know I have famously had this 5-hour round trip commute when I was working for this company. And at that time, that's how I was watching it. And here we are 3 months later, and I had not been anywhere since before the series ended. I don't work for that company anymore. I lost that job. I still do the work, but as a freelancer. So I lost that employment as a result of coronavirus. And many other aspects of my life have also changed, and I've lost things that were an important part of my life since then too. So it seemed like it was so long ago, but it was really just a few months. Anyway, Larry, I think the last time you and I recorded, so since then, Matthew and I did one episode of The Ready Room where we talked about mid-season Picard, and I believe it was right after Stardust City Rag aired. So it was roughly mid-season. I think you and I talked just before the premiere, if I remember correctly. So we haven't really talked about the story itself and how it played out, and now it's over.
The payoff.
So my first question for you would be, looking back at the series, what did you think about the overall story? I was saying, at the time we had that first talk, I was just thinking that everything CBS was doing, and not in a cynical way, in a very, I was comparing it to as Paramount was ending the filming of Star Trek IV. It's like everybody's watching the rushes and the dailies, and they're getting the sense that you can tell. You can tell when you're in rehearsal on a play. You can tell when you're putting a TV series or a film together. You don't have to have the final edit and the final sweet version or get the first audience test focus, sample group. You know when something is clicking and it's going to be awesome. You can also tell when it's not so awesome. Or you can tell when I'm sure we'll find somebody to save this or to make it better. But this is a case, I think, with Picard where everybody was so excited about it. They didn't mind letting that seep in between the lines in the promotion, like Star Trek IV was before they released it. And it just felt golden. All the promotion just felt like they did everything. They hit all the right buttons, all the right keys, all the right tones. Everybody was in love with this show. I kept saying everything is golden, especially compared to only 2 to 3 years before. We'd just been through the meltdown that was the Discovery launch and the online. The regular trolls and bots are combined in with people who had really sincere objections to Discovery, along with the people who knew that this wasn't the best it could be, but people that knew how TV and how production works. And we all knew, or we had a hint at it, how troubled the production launch was. And we all knew it had been delayed. All that labored birth. And Picard was such a contrast to that I was looking forward to it. And then as it unspooled, a lot of people had issues with it, but me, to finally answer your question, there were parts that I can totally draw a big red circle around what I didn't like or what I thought was a waste of time or was way overblown. But for most of the time, I was happy with it. I thought it's fun. I still sense that a lot of people, me included, and writers included, but I still sense a lot of people were still adjusting to how serialized storytelling works and how Star Trek looks in a serial. I think it was much better conceived, much more grounded and stable and sane when it was conceived and brought to page and then brought to camera, as opposed to, even the second season of Discovery that everybody praised as a big improvement. You had the showrunners were fired 6 shows in, and that tweaked a little bit, but. And you can feel the tone shift.
Yeah, not near as much as first season, but it's still there.
Right, not as much.
And we were all aware of it, too. It's not like it was a secret. Yeah. But Picard is a show where all of that was worked out early, and they did shift the pilot. The pilot was going to be 2 hours. They added some scenes and had a short third section. So the pilot's really the first 3.
Yeah, the first 3.
And when we had the premiere, I think I mentioned that they showed the premiere was seen as 3. And Hennel Culpepper was... Instead of that, every two hours a block for the directors, she wound up with 3 so that there was just 1 hour for one of the directors. But aside from those but that's typical. That's what you expect, the tweaks coming out of the gate with a new show and a pilot and all that. I was pretty much satisfied the way it unspooled. We'll get into some things here maybe. But overall, it's what I thought I was... not specific story choices, but as far as the overall quality and the tone... And what I thought they would kind of do broadly with Picard. And some of these character types, you saw them introduce characters finally. And the vibe and the feel, and even a lot of the throwaway stuff. I just felt like Star Trek. And also, they finally had the luxury of all that chunk of fandom that's been screaming for, go forward, quit going backwards. It's all forward in time to me, but that's me living in 2020. 2161 still was in the future, guys. But I thought they were, they had that luxury of being able to finally project 20 and 30 years ahead. And I thought most of the aspects of production did a good job of paying homage and building on. And some of them I thought did remarkably well, good jobs. So I I'm like at 80, 90% with it. And some people are horrified. I don't get the people that absolutely detest Picard. Or I don't understand that. Yeah.
Either.
But yeah. I'm totally happy with it was kind of what I expected or better.
Yeah, I was quite happy with what they produced. It's not quite what I was expecting. I don't know if I was expecting anything in particular.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I was expecting that it's not going to be TNG, which is why I said many times that all the fans that are really excited about it because they think Captain Picard's coming back and finally we're going to get TNG again because we don't like Discovery, they're going to be really disappointed because this is not going to be TNG at all. It's more likely to be similar to Discovery than similar to TNG. So beyond that, I don't know if I was really expecting anything specific. I think that because we learned through the pre-release promotions that the Borg were going to be involved, that Jerry Ryan was in there, that Jonathan Del Arco was coming back, and we had those images of a Borg cube, so we knew that the Borg were going to be in there somehow.
I was going to say, even before the images were released, just them announcing Jerry Ryan, oh, cool, yeah. 7. And then Jonathan Del Arco, Hugh. Gosh, can we draw a commonality here between, I wonder what's going to be, but yeah, and then they confirmed it finally. But even, you know.
But the way they used the Borg is not anything like what I thought we would see going in. So that was very different. And what I definitely did not really anticipate, and I say really because there's one caveat, but what I didn't anticipate, and I don't think many people did, is that the story would essentially be a follow-up to The Measure of a Man with Bruce Maddox. And like that, I didn't see coming. Now, having Data in there, having it be somehow connected to Nemesis, I could imagine, and the relationship between Picard and Data. But the Bruce Maddox part, I didn't really quite expect, so that was interesting. I said there's a caveat. The one thing is that when they showed the initial images of Daj, I for some reason just thought there's a connection to Data, and maybe it's Data's daughter. I didn't think it was Law, so it didn't quite make sense to me how it would be Data's daughter or somehow connected to Data, but I did have that feeling, so that part didn't surprise me when it came up. My general feeling about the story is that I feel like the setup was great. The first 3 episodes did a really good job of setting up the story that I think they set out to tell, but I don't know that they quite told the story that they set out to tell. Like, I feel like the story meanders often. There are those moments where you feel like they're spending way too much time on certain things. And then there are those moments where they just gloss over things to the point where you wonder, why don't you put more time into this? I mean, Commodore O is a great example. It's a poorly written character. It makes no sense within the context of the story. I mean, the idea of her does, but the way it's presented.
And them, much less the audience. The characters in universe and the audience watching the show. One or the other of us should have had a clue whether she was a Vulcan or a Romulan or a Vulcan Romulan, whatever it was, or some construct. O-H? Who the hell ever heard of a Romulan or a Vulcan ever? I'm like, what was I haven't had a chance yet and I haven't read. The other wacky thing about this is the way so many little drips and drabs of Michael Chabon on his Instagram has been, I've been preaching up and down, aside from you two, and I think we got into this, we did talk last time, about I've been preaching, trying to brace the world that thinks they're just going to get more shiny, happy captain on a bridge with adventures every week. It's like, no, and Patrick wouldn't do that, and then he eventually came out and said, he even stole my line where I said, hey, everybody, this is going to be the Loganization of Next Generation. And then later on he said, I see it's much like the Logan, because it was him in that movie too.
I know what you mean. And I mean, as far as Commodore O goes, well, for me, it was kind of odd because O is a Japanese surname. It's also a Korean surname. And they've got a Japanese,
Yes,
an actress
yes.
of Japanese descent playing the character, and doesn't make any sense as either a Vulcan or a Romulan
Yes.
name. The moment I saw her, I thought she's a Romulan, and I think that the conversation when Clancy calls her and tells her Picard visited me, and O says, "Hey, look, you know very well that if there were Romulan operatives on Earth, I would know, and then you would know." And to me, that was an admission right off the bat that she's a Romulan. She's a spy who has infiltrated Starfleet, and Clancy knows that. So she's a Badmiral, right? But that's never explored beyond that, except they have her come out and do the Ray-Ban spot where she comes out with her dark glasses on, you know? And credit to many fans who picked up on that and said, hey, that means that Agnes is a double agent. And I kind of resisted that because I didn't want that to be true, because it's such like just a cliche standard writing these days. But sure enough.
And not out of the gate, you know, but after the rendezvous, the sandwich rendezvous on the bench on the cliff.
Yeah.
Listening to her iTunes. Yeah.
Well, she was listening to Caecilian Opera, which is a Discovery tie-in.
Yes.
You know, so.
Deep cut there.
But anyway, so we're going off on a tangent here, but just to bring us back around, I think that overall, I thought it was a very interesting story. It was more tightly crafted than Discovery has been in either its first two seasons.
Well, again, the luxury, quote unquote, of having a sane writing process without a lot of major upheaval.
Yeah,
right.
But the thing is, the way you're producing these shows now, like you're limiting yourself to 10 episodes. The studio is limiting the story to 10 episodes. I know there's financial reasons for it and all, but if you compare it with traditional television, this is an artificial framework that they're creating to tell these stories. We're going to do it in 10 episodes. You don't have to do it in 10 episodes. You could do it in 11, or you could do it in 12. And what I noticed with Picard, which puzzled me, is that for the first part of the season especially, they stuck to this like 44 to 47 minute range for episodes, like traditional like TNG era.
Right.
You know, we got down to about 42, I think, towards the end of Voyager and in Enterprise, but TNG was around, and DS9 and early Voyager around 45 to 47 minutes. Why do you do that? You don't have to. You could use 50, and they did later. They have 55-minute episodes later. And so when I'm watching the story and I feel that you're spending too much time on some things in the first 3 episodes, and then you're glossing over other things, and you're coming in at 47, and you could add 3 minutes, and you could give us a little more background. Why aren't you doing that? That is a little bit odd to me, and I'm sure there are reasons. You know, there are reasons, probably budgetary or contractual or time on location, or I'm sure there are reasons, but we don't know what those are when we're watching, and so we're just wondering why the story is unfolding in the way that it is when you don't have the constraints of broadcast television on UPN in particular, or syndication before that, where even though you were syndicated, you still had to create a package that could air in a normal 1 hour time slot, right? So that's sort of my kind of general feelings on it.
And it also got skewed when they decided to make a 3-part pilot, quote unquote, and instead of a 2-part. And so they kind of stole from the two ends to pad the middle, and then came up with the whole flashback sequence on Mars, which was interesting and was a great layer of texture in the story. The flashbacks were, I thought some of the flashbacks were some of the best parts of the original flight, the Mars attack and all that, and a lot of visuals, and and Picard and Raffi, at the time that they get drummed out, right? Like that stuff, that's actually needed, right? That stuff needs to be in there, because the stuff with Picard and Raffi, if you read the comic, then you're fine. You know what happened. It's explained.
And if you watch the short trek, you know about the attack on Mars, but you don't really know why it happens. So I think you do need to have that in there. But the thing is, you should never rely on people reading a comic or watching a short episode to understand the story. So I think that it's good that they put those in there.
Especially when 10 years later, you're going to contradict your last official comic.
Right. That's true.
And mess up your stellar cartography situation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. For you, that's
right. Oh,
right.
Hobus isn't that. Hobus is this. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, right. The supernova thing.
Yeah. The whole scope of it. Yeah. But it's on film. You can't, whatever. We can talk about that later, but that's a tiny part.
Well, that's the thing is that it's all canon, but it contradicts itself. And it's not like today's canon.
This is film canon versus a 10-year-old comic that was, third tier canon, but now in a vacuum. And now we're on film. So, okay, we'll go with this.
It's interesting though, because see, for me, well, first of all, that I consider the literary universe to be at least adjacent canon, right? I know it can be overwritten, but it all ties into my head canon.
Yeah.
But with the comics, however, the thing is, J.J. Abrams, that's part of his whole method of storytelling, is to have supplemental material for what you see on screen. So just like I consider Una's book part of Picard canon,
right?
Even though it's a book, I also consider the Kelvinverse Countdown comics to be part of the canon of those films because they were very specifically designed.
Well, and Alex and Bob
to
wrote
set
them.
up those stories.
Yes, and that was it. But I will still say it ain't real until it's on film. But up until that point, what I always call canon in a vacuum. If there's nothing else than on film, the most authoritative source, then go with that. And if one of the authoritative sources is someone on the creative team did it, whether it's Bob and Alex or it's, I don't know, Jerry Taylor, or whatever. Go with that until contradicted later because someone either forgot or somebody else, the political wind shifted and somebody else is doing this now or whatever. Yeah. But no, I'm totally there. But now it's film trumps can't. That was 10 years ago and now this. But yeah.
But that happens with creative work. I mean, you have to give creatives some latitude. So I have no problem with that. Let me ask you a quick question because I jotted this down when you were talking and I tweeted this on Friday. Do you think that if Picard were being made, if we could go back to the golden age of TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise.
We call it the Berman era, Chris. Okay.
Oh, is it the Berman era? It's BE. Okay, if we could go back to 1996 BE.
Yeah.
When we had 2-hour pilots for Star Trek series, do you think that these 3 episodes, Remembrance, Maps and Legends, and The End is the Beginning, would have actually been a single episode? Because I think that the story would have been tightened up a bit so that it could fit within the 2-hour format. And I think that we would have just gotten all of that content as the pilot episode.
Well, again, they started off to have a 2-hour air quote pilot. And then decided that they needed to have the big Mars flashback. Not that we didn't have a hint about what thanks to the short treks, but that they wanted to see visually what it looked like and how it felt like and how it came out of the blue, how it was a Pearl Harbor 9/11 kind of moment. And also you do follow, the android, you follow him enough to see that he has a norm. You get it that it's not like that. It's obviously a mechanical glitch. Like something is being overridden in the moment. He doesn't come in.
Or something was planted in him and it was activated.
Yes, it was activated. And we all saw Data go bonkers and be called home in Brothers, right? And other times. But they started off not having that whole sequence, and it was its own thing, and they did it in a very budgetary way. But still, it was a very like a 5-10 minute teaser or whatever. Which right there, you've got a fourth of a short hour. So they took a few bits away from probably the other hours and maybe lengthened some. And they were a little more leisurely about the pacing and some of the other, the other bits too, but to set up the story. But they started off with a 2-hour and they just decided to pad it. But I think it was great to do that just because the more they talk about the synths attack on Mars and that the androids were affected and took, self-destructed the place. They were the fifth column there on the surface, but, and in the docks, but, to actually see it in action and to see that something happened, like you get this external manipulation factor that you can tell something clicked in. It's almost like, what was that old show way back when that one Arium. when she clicked in, is that whole thing of going along, and then ding, ding, ding. Here's the, how are we going to telegraph that something is happening?
But Larry, remember, with Arium, they spent weeks and months and
I know
years setting up her character,
and that's why it was so damn effective. I mean, we all just ached because we'd had so much invested in building up her progress.
So,
I mean, when the Trieste found Arium on that planet. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm skipping. Wait, wrong.
But about this, Larry, but one way you could do this, though, is that you don't have to show that whole sequence with that fate. He has the F8 on the back of his head.
Right.
With that android. You don't have to show all of that in the pilot. You could just have the attack happen. Picard finds out that it happened, and then in the next episode, the next regular episode, you could then go tell the story of what happened on Mars. So
you flashback backer.
Yeah.
Further back.
You flashback backer.
You flashback further back, yeah.
So there are ways that you could do it. It just felt to me like
it was too long a pilot. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, well, no, not exactly.
Quote unquote.
I think my feeling, probably the best way to describe it, is that altogether, those 3 episodes, they just feel like the pilot. They're just setting up the story. And at the end of the 3rd episode, they finally leave Earth and they go and they set off on this journey. But you've already used up almost a third of your entire run doing that because you only have 10 episodes. So if you only have 10 episodes, why don't you make the pilot 1 episode and make it 2 hours? And then you've got 9 more episodes to tell the rest of the story. I think that's probably the reason I feel this way.
You sound like you're channeling the Manny Coto 4th season. No, I don't want to do 8 space Nazi episodes. Let's get the hell out of here and get on with what we really want to do.
Well, Larry, I was... one thing I've been doing during quarantine is I've been watching a lot of commentaries from movies and episodes and such. I even watched one with some guy named Larry Nemecek on there. I mean, that was
a waste of time.
That was an interesting one. I don't know why they let him get on mic and camera, but they were simpler times and they were more desperate in the past. But yeah, they were more desperate. No, but I went back and I watched that wonderful conversation on the Enterprise season 1 set with Rick and Brandon, where they're reminiscing about the creation of Enterprise and all. And one thing
and the boy bands,
yeah, I love that story. But one thing here is that, as they said, Manny Coto couldn't do anything wrong. So if you're comparing me to Manny Coto, I think that's some good company right there to be on, because at least I know that I won't do anything wrong with Star Trek.
And what's better is you've got that whole career with 24 ahead of you to come.
I have to ask you, Larry, 'cause I was thinking to myself, I can't tell, and you know Rick and Brennan way better than I do. I mean, I've never talked to Rick. Right. I've talked to Brennan, but do you feel like they were just joking and being sarcastic, or do you feel like they actually were a little bit hurt by that fan reaction of like Manny's season of Enterprise is so much better than the 3 that they did?
I have no doubt that they're a little hurt, but then Brannon did a 5-year, Enterprise apology tour, like in the aughts.
Yeah,
or the early teens when there was, it's like he kind of came out of his shell and went around for ages and kept apologizing and for the finale and for
I remember that
and and here's what we would have done differently and all that because And Rick Rick was really, on one hand, burned. I mean, things happen the way they happen, and sometimes you're screwed, and sometimes you cause it, and sometimes it happens to you, and most of the time it's a mix of everything.
Yeah.
So he was on, it's sad when you go through that. He was on top for so many years, and then you're gone. Things turn, and it happens to everybody, whether you deserved it or not. Everybody, but I don't know, Tom Hanks and Patrick Stewart maybe. But to name 2, but I'm sure there's a little bit of hurt there.
I was just curious because I was listening to them, and I've watched that.
But it's not like CBS
before.
came crawling back to Manny Coto to give him the keys.
right, yeah.
to anything future. So
but the thing is, Manny's season is wonderful. It's one of the best seasons of Star Trek, actually. But the first 3 seasons are also good. They're just different. Mm-hmm. So I was just curious. Okay, let's get back to Picard. And so the next question. The ending, I think, probably caught everybody off guard. What happens to Picard at the end of the story? What do you think about the conclusion of the story?
Yeah. Okay. Well, see, overall, I'm fine with it. Now, let me jump back. And I think I should have listened to our first conversation, but I didn't. So I don't remember where we
never
were.
listen to our conversations, Larry.
No.
I mean, even when we're talking, we're not listening, right?
I never listen to the thing you say, Chris. I'm sorry. What was your name again? I remember thinking out of the gate. So they announced Picard. And even before he is saying, hey, I would not have agreed to this if it wasn't going to be something different, because I don't want to do retreads. I don't want to do sequels. I don't want to just play the same old thing again. I did that already. And that's what an actor would, that's what a creative would say. I'll do it again if we, but not to bastardize anything, not to neuter it. He's not going to do, he cares about the character too much. And if anything, the legacy, he's only gotten that the last 5-10 years. It's like, oh my God, these fans, and I'm going to go over and I've got this body of work as a Shakespearean actor, all these other roles. I'll never forget he played the gay boyfriend in The Birdcage. The first thing after Next Generation, like something totally, off the wall, different than Jean-Luc Picard. But he's an actor with this, and he's aging, but in excellent health and still,
amazing.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not like he's going to go quietly off into retirement here. Even if it's for a while there, even if it's, and I say this, it's what he was doing before Star Trek. Even if it's doing stage plays, whether it's Ian McKellen or who he's with, he's totally happy there. He doesn't need to worry about the money. That was the other thing. He doesn't have to do this for money. He's not coming back beholden to getting him into his retirement years. So it's not about money, and it's not about ego, really. He did not have to do this. He could totally be a creative decision. I'm not going to do something that bores me or, oh my God, he didn't want to aftermash it. He didn't want to come in and do a sequel that, oh my God, can't hold a candle to the and tarnish the reputation of the thing that he did first. So all of that going on, we're there. But then that said, I'm thinking, well, Patrick is 79? It's like, well, are they going to truly Loganize this and have it be a season? And at the end of the season, Picard dies. But they at least give it a final, CBS All Access gets a huge moneymaker out of it and they do a season. And I wondered about that. And I was like, wow, you think the tone and what kind of a format it's going to be. Wait till they kill Picard at the end of this season and everybody loses their stuff over that. And then somewhere along the way, he or Akiva Goldsman or someone said, well, off the cuff, we think we've got material for 3 seasons. And I went, oh, okay. Then they're not going to kill him off. Wow. They're really going to do this. And also by that time, I think they had a handle on, they were starting to get excited with what they were doing. So it wasn't like dreading it. Oh my God, are we going to do this for a second year? What's Monty Python's Contractual Obligation album? It's like, okay, I did it. There, fine, everybody. Here, more Picard. Bang. There you go. Okay. Leave me alone. Of course I love the character, but come on, guys. Enough is enough. Kind of a thing. So they're feeling good enough about it to already be saying that. So the fact that they did what they did at the end, the way they got to it, the way, Brent plays a Soong because Silvertongue Brent.
Imagine that.
I know, but it's kind of like, okay, you knew he was playing the Data. It's like her playing, twins. It's like saying, here's Voke. Oh, look, he's Tyler. Yes. Yeah. But those things they've gotten good. It's like, I want to know who in Pike is going to be introduced as a certain character. And for whatever reason, the actor is going to wind up playing something else by the end. The regular is going to wind up playing something else by the end of the season. To have Brent pop up as a Soong was bizarre, but it's kind of like, well, you should have known they wouldn't have him just playing Brent as a flashback memory. But the fact that the plot kept revolving around androids and AI and all of that was, but that was kind of interesting. I'll just tell you, you're asking about the finale. I know I was basically fine with it. I thought once they decided to make that decision, the last scene is kind of riveting. I mean, it's really amazing. I was laughing internally just in a production sense because those, whatever they were, whatever kind of memory storage device, those 3 blocks. You know, we laugh about isolinear optical. We laugh about the 1/4-inch plywood, microtape from the original series. It's like those were like play school wooden building blocks that Picard had. Yeah. It's like it's a simple, totally untextured rectangular solid that he's pulling those out. But it's so dramatic, and the music and the drama, and everyone's standing around like it's a mini funeral as he's doing it virtually, and we're seeing what it looks like inside the program. And all he's doing is pulling out these 3, I'm going to slowly withdraw. It's like taking out Hal's memory at the end of 2001 or something, But the fact that they were in all these gaudy, uber-teched, filled with greeblies, as Rick Sternbach would have said, these techified techie things, they're just these simple blocks. But that showed you how powerful that scene was at the end. And it really cracked people up it messed people up at the end. And then to come back from that, and look, we've kind of got the beginnings of a bright, happy crew not bright, happy, but a little more healed individually crew. And I know people are going, but shouldn't Agnes be a criminal? And, and what's Seven doing there? Is Seven going with them? And why is Seven, bi or gay now? And I mean, all these things that popped up. It's like, okay, fine. Well, that's your teasers for next season. Okay, fine. And what happened to Nemecek? Well, the last we saw, he was taken away. Well, we deleted the scene where we kind of saw what happened to him. Is he just gone? That's all. That would be sad, but that's kind of far down the list of things to
He's still there on the planet throwing rocks at things.
Pushing buttons on a remote control and throwing it around. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did have a whole little iMud here. How many sets of twins did they have to go find? I could totally went back into Gene Kuhn and Bob Justman casting iMud for all the twin sets when they got to. Yeah. I was like, oh, look, it's an homage to iMud.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Casting-wise. Anyway, what I did think was, wait, they put him in an android body. Yeah. That's interesting. Because then I got confused. Okay, so was the golem originally meant for... Who was it meant for? And then the last minute change of plan was to use it for him, for Picard. But overall, it's like those episodes, even when Next Generation was going to fix the wacky science of the original series. And then in second season, they started having the transporter be used to restore, Pulaski's restored to her age. And they were like, whoa, you could just see Mike Coto and Rick Sternbach in their tech notes, and whoever the science advisors were like, whoa, guys, you're letting the transporter get out of control again. We've got to nail this down. As you did that with Picard at the end of in Arcadia, that it's like, whoa, they're doing this. And then they actually had that little 3 or 4 minute, like, haha, fans, we'll cover this. And Picard is asking the questions. Wait a minute, am I immortal now? Oh, no, you'll still wear out. It was kind of like, well, okay, we've hemmed this in. We haven't let this. That's one thing they did to answer before they let it go, So that was at about the time I started to go, wait a minute, guys, okay. But still, it's confounding. People are really upset about that. And I'm going, well, Spock died and was regurgitated from Genesis, so it's been done before. People are upset about it. Nobody said, well, it's not really Spock the last 20 years of his life. Anyway, that's me.
Well, Larry, on the other side of the room, you said that if I have one of these great insights when we're talking, to point this out, and I just had one. So, yes, Picard is going to wear out. However, if you go back to the beginning, he ordered decaffeinated Earl Grey. So, in his new android body, does caffeine affect him? Does it matter if he has regular Earl Grey or decaf? There you
go. Actually, I'm sorry. I was hoping for better, but okay.
This is a minor insight, but this is like really, really.
You're going to hang around you're waiting to see what his first T replicator order is? Is that what you're saying here?
I think in the season 2 pilot, he's going to order T very early in the episode. Yeah.
And not say decaf, so you know that he's feeling his oats as a not android.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
I just wait. It's the scene. It's going to be in the season 2 teaser.
I feel young
be there.
as when
tea had caffeine in it.
I feel young as when the vineyard was new. Yes, okay. You know what?
And the doctor told me it was okay to drink caffeine.
that part, my stomach has a 5-year warranty on it now, so we can just swap it out. Right. It's fine. It's fine.
That's right.
No, are we going to talk about the rest of the season though? Because I did have a couple of things I definitely wanted to get to.
We can, but just on the ending,
broad strokes,
a little
broad
bit.
Strokes.
So, a couple of things about the ending. So there's the whole conversation with Picard and Data.
Yes.
And letting go.
Yes.
And I thought it was a beautiful scene. Mm-hmm. It was wonderful to see them have that moment together again. And it was truly this time the end of Data's journey to become human. I've always felt that the end of Nemesis worked fine for me, that Data died because he sacrificed himself to save Picard.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a human act. That's the ultimate sacrifice. So that was him completing his journey to become human.
You felt you had closure, is what you're saying.
And you had closure.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, it's going to have an impact on Picard. But if 20 years later, Picard is still
mooning about it,
come to terms with the death of Data,
yeah,
that's a little bit odd. I think, especially for a man like Jean-Luc Picard, I think he would be able to come to terms with that. So having that be like the impetus for the story is a little bit of a stretch, but I'm also okay with it because they were able to make a good story out of it. But now we once again have to have this closure at the end, of the story.
One thing that might help alleviate your concern there about have we just wimpified Picard horribly? If he
well,
was,
I didn't say that.
If he was mooning, he was mooning over Data's loss for 20 years, I'm going to say that I took it as Picard moved on the way we all deal. Mm-hmm. Most of us are able to deal with tragedy and trauma, hopefully. Moved on because he had such a full life. He's in command of the Eve for many, many more years. He is transferred and takes over the refugee mission. I'm just thinking that when as happens with people, we're zooming along or we're free conference calling along, whatever you're, no, we're rolling along with our lives.
We're free clouding.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. GNDNing, 47ing, if you read the graphics. We're so full of a life. We've got more we can keep up with sometimes to our detriment, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then something happens that everything just collapses, snaps. We're fired out of the blue. There's a pandemic. There's a tsunami. There's a stock market crash. There's a whatever. We have someone dies in our family. Our company goes belly up and it's out of our control. Whatever happens, our life is totally upheavaled. Like, not even like where you have a slow crash and you land and no, I mean like it blows up, like it blew up for him. He stood up. It gradually got crazy and crazy and crazy. He finally took a stand. It went totally 180 the way he thought. He had the long red carpet that had been out for Jean-Luc Picard for his entire last 30, 40 years of his career was gone. And he's just in a lump on the floor. He took people with him. And all I'm saying is the shock to the system that is, the life trauma that is. And he goes back and he's just going to nurse his wounds back. For one, that's all he can do. But he's there. Yeah. I'm just going to say that ruminating about Data really didn't kick in until he was home alone with his thoughts, getting up, watching Romulans help him grow wine every day.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. And to take that a step further, I think that when he met Daj and he realized that there was some connection to Data that still existed,
right?
Then that set him.
That was a little bit of a trigger.
His journey,
yes,
made him think even more about it. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's how you explain how this works for the story. Even though some people have pointed out that I don't think Jean-Luc would be. Worrying so much for so many years.
There was a lot of
probably for many years he wasn't.
Yeah, and I try on my weekly Tuesdays live commentary soapbox. I would see this pop up because it got to the point where I'd watch an episode when they were running on Discovery, especially and Picard too. But you'd watch an episode and then go, okay, and here's my own reactions. And then that night, late, or the next day, get up and I'd see 4.7 crazy things coming out of the internet fandom. People, things like, what? No, I never ever thought that. Or no, that's not a problem.
Right.
That's not a problem because A, B, C, D, E from the last 30 years or some other series or whatever. But it was like the outrage or the shock of the week. And some of them I kind of understood. The first F-bomb from Tilly, I kind of saw people get upset about that. But it's like, okay. But again, Discovery and Picard both, I take it back to everybody is still watching these shows like they are anything prior. Their next gen or original series. They're watching them as episodes, not chapters in a book.
Their expectations are traditional Star Trek.
And you're not going to go darkness to light in 1 hour. You're going to go darkness, little less dark, maybe a little light. Oh, now back. I mean, the arc is 10 or 12 or 15 episodes, and we're not used to that. And people that got really upset with, I think, especially Stardust City Rag, but other ones too. I think Nepenthe was the only one that people all loved, except those 3 people over in the corner that still had things to hate about Nepenthe. But the golden. But
the Bunnycorn Society, they were not very happy.
No, they weren't
with that episode.
No, they did not like to see the Rikers having meat on their pizza. But hey, whatever that's fine. I don't want to go down there, but I'm not going to die on that hill. But what I'm trying to say is this whole concept about seeing people get upset about a show, and they kept thinking about these individual episodes as individual episodes. And it's like, I finally said one week, I said, look, imagine if you're watching, pick Wrath of Khan, pick First Contact. The DVD has them, into 10-minute chapters or whatever. There's 10 or 12 or 15 chapters, quote unquote, of a movie for your DVD, enjoyment. Imagine that you're going to watch this movie for the first time, and every week you get 10 minutes. And then wherever that ends, you go away for a week, and you have to sit with that for a week. Whether you liked it, you didn't like it, you liked where the story was, you didn't like where the story was. You thought it was crazy. You thought this character did something that was completely ridiculous for the character, or for Star Trek, or for Starfleet, or for the Klingons, or whatever it was. But you didn't get the next chapter until the next week, and then you saw the next 10 minutes. And you're like, oh, okay, well, this is moving along. Oh, okay. And by the time you get to the 4th or 5th one, you've totally forgotten about what you were upset about on chapter 2 at the end, because it's aside from the time going by, it's mellowed out. You've gotten lost in more of the story. The story's maybe answered what your concern was, or you've seen how it's resolved, or you've just intrinsically realized that your worry is, don't worry, and finally, by the end of seeing all the chapters, you get it, and you still may have individual critiques, but now you can look at them as parts of the whole story, not flaws within a thing. And I said, that's where we are. And whether the writers are executing that as expertly as could, that's the model. So everybody, it's like, I refuse, unless it's something really, really dire, I refuse to put time and energy into getting upset week to week until you get a sense of, again, unless something really goes outlandishly left.
Larry, that's because you don't know how to use social media properly.
Apparently not. I haven't attacked half of the known world population for some reason yet. So apparently so.
But yeah, what you're saying, that's how it is. And yeah, I've been saying that too, that especially with Discovery.
And I'm not criticizing people.
Chapters in a book.
It's like a new muscle we're having. It's the culture we're living in. That's the way everything's going.
I think it's easier for people to accept that watching other TV shows.
Exactly.
New shows. But with Star Trek, because we've had so many decades of a certain type of storytelling, it's difficult to adapt. Yeah.
Yeah. People just have a hard time watching serial stories with their Star Trek glasses on. It's like you totally forget everything you've ever known about watching. Name your short season serial, Game of Thrones on down. So
the other part of the ending is Picard becoming an android and being put into the golem. And you asked earlier, was the golem intended for someone else? What was going on there? I think after watching it many times, my feeling is that Soong had created the golem for himself.
That's kind of what I thought. Yes.
Yeah. And he gave it up to save Picard because he makes a comment, or I think it's him, but there's a comment in there about what a sacrifice was made, right? And that's my feeling, is that he had been working on that for himself so that he could make the transition to being an artificial life form himself.
I want an android body. I kept thinking of Uhura. Again, all these iMud references. See, all these iMud callbacks. You didn't even...
I wish I were a fake boy. That's not to say androids are fake.
No.
And it's sort of part of the point of the story, which is very interesting, that, Picard will live on now, and he's artificial. And I feel like in this day and age where we are in the early stages of being able to see that there's a good chance that as biological beings, we will make a transition into being artificial life in the future. And there will be a point where biological beings like us are not around anymore, and that we've passed our essence and our knowledge on to our own creation.
I mean, we've been on that track since about, 77, 78, because, we have the technology.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've been on that track for a long time. We're still a long way from it being real.
Right.
But it does seem like a logical
and all of these Android, AI, EMH issues that Star Trek keeps raising. I mean, it was an interesting end for the season. I mean, I'm just in my popcorn bowl eating moment here. I'm just like, okay, fine. Bring some more. Now, are we going to, there's two things I definitely want to say and critique about the season in short things, but they're kind of limited. But are we there yet? Are we there yet, Dad?
I'm not sure if we're there yet. I want to finish on the Golem Picard here, because I think fan reaction was quite mixed about what does this mean for Picard? Like, is this really Picard now? Did Picard die? Is this android Picard actually Jean-Luc Picard, or is this a new being? And I think those are answers that we'll probably get. And the fact that the question's being asked, I think, is the point, right? As science fiction.
Funny how they saved it to leave you with that at the end of the season, huh?
Amazing like that. But it is a great science fiction question, and it's something that Star Trek would address. Like, what does it mean to be artificial? And when you cross that barrier from being biological to being artificial, but your memories have been transferred, how much of who you are is the memory that you acquire over the course of your life, and how much of it is the biological system of your body?
And then when you take that android body with an analog memory grid, and then you put it in a transporter that technically kills you and then brings you back. You every time. Now now where the hell are you standing? Now what do you know?
Exactly. But so this is going to be an interesting thing, and it does feel a little bit like, we wanted to kill Picard at the end of the season, but we also want to make season 2 because we can make a lot more money, and we do have some more story that we could tell, but we can make a lot more money, right? If we have another season or 2 out of this. So we need Jean-Luc Picard to be around. So maybe we can do both. Maybe we can kill him, but we can still keep him around.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a very it's almost like leaving him at the end of a season as Locutus, and you wonder whether you're going to come back. Does Patrick, it's season 3, does Patrick want out of his contract? Well, we'll just leave him over there as Locutus, and we'll just kill him off remotely. But as a crass, dealing with a contract issue and an actor in the real world. But it's a science fiction-y thing. Obviously, when they felt comfortable, they liked the story. I think it may not have been settled early on. I think they talked about how they weren't quite exactly sure how they would land it. Maybe halfway through it started to come together. They had to get out of the gate first and see how the basic story was going to go down, and maybe tweaked it as they went along. But I don't want this to sound like blasphemy, but I'm basically fine with it. I mean, I saw everybody getting off on those existential questions, and I thought, well, okay, I understand that, the questioning and the curiosity and even the debate. But again, the first thing I thought of was, I thought of Spock first. Now, that was the organic Vulcan. That wasn't artificial. It was just artificial to everybody but Vulcans. But at least it was an organic Vulcan thing to do that the ancients did. So, of course, it's got to be Spock or somebody in his family that's going to revolutionize it or expose it as a, whatever the storyline is. It's going to be one of our regulars. It's going to bring it back, put it back in the tomb, whatever it is. But other, Ira Graves, this whole thing about, I'm half kidding about iMud, but that's what that was all about. Corby, every Star Trek dance with androids, starting with Corby, has explored this in What Are Little Girls Made Of? And then the iMud androids, even though it was a comedy. And then Ira Graves, it wasn't about androids per se, but he was working on a body. He was dying and he wanted to transfer his consciousness in. And even not on the nose androids, but the passenger, I've gone blank on the villain, but was going to instill, was going to keep living on and on and on, instilling his consciousness into another body. I think organics, maybe. It's not like it's an uncommon concept for Star Trek, much less sci-fi, to get into. So I was kind of, I don't know if that was telling that we've had so many, or that they just, and it is kind of the nature of the whole thing about Borg is they kind of dallied with that as an overlapping Venn diagram of plot ideas. Is the Borg aren't a species. They're everybody else's, they're 50,000 species that have all had tech glommed onto them. They don't reproduce and reproduce more Borg babies. I mean, it's like, those are transformations.
Right. Well, there were Borg babies originally, but they got rid of those pretty quickly, right? So
yes. Say Borg babies 3 times fast. That's all I wanted you to.
The babies in the drawers. So.
And the Borg baby on Voyager.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's one more angle to this, though, that's separate from the existential question. And it's the fact that, so Data completes his journey.
The little
they remove the little
blocks
blocks.
Are gone, yes.
Data's gone. He lets go, okay? But there's also the fact that this story is essentially a follow-up to The Measure of a Man. And in The Measure of a Man, Picard has to advocate on Data's behalf that Data is a sentient being who has the same rights as anyone else and the freedom to determine his own fate. So Picard, and at that point, okay, because that's early season 2, Picard hasn't been around Data that long yet. So like in Picard the series, when he talks about how Data was a dear friend, Data was not a dear friend at the time The Measure of a Man
on principle.
Took place. Right. There are many years to go after that. At that point, Picard was just very much advocating for the Star Trek idea of equality, right?
Right. Show us your medals. Show us your lovers. Yes.
So what? Data is artificial. He's a machine. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have the same rights as you and me. He clearly is intelligent and he can think. It's not just algorithms. So Picard has this long history of advocating on behalf of Data and supporting Data's journey to explore humanity and become more human. Right. You've got things like them being on the holodeck together, doing Shakespeare. He's always supporting Data. And the end game of all of this, as I see it, is that it's the end of Picard's journey that he's advocated for so long. And also following the Mars attack, he's telling them, like, look, all the artificial life forms, they're not all bad, right? Like something happened here with these artificial life forms, but it doesn't mean we shut everything down. And in the end, Picard dies and he becomes the very being that he was advocating for on behalf of all of these years. And also, it happens at the hand of Soong, the family that created Data in the first place. So that's sort of how I see it and why I'm okay with it, that it's the end of one journey for Picard, and it's the start of another journey that he will take in the form of a type of life form that he had been supporting the rights of for all these years.
With a Soong at the other end of the blower. Well, I don't know why I jumped into Ioshan there, but yeah, at the other end of the horn. Yeah, I mean, yes. Yeah. I mean, if you really want to search for, strange new worlds, new life, new civilization, well, there it sits at the end of the table. Went, okay, so this is what they're going to, and people that were a lot of people I think were just upset structurally. They're like, how can they end the season right there? It's like, what do you think they're going to play with? Like that's going to be, now you're going to see how this plays out. For all the people that say, wrap it up in an hour. No, this is going to play. And you know what? I don't want to be crass or unkind or anything, and I just saw another interview the other day, this drip, drip, drip of stuff. I almost wish we were back in the Ivory Tower days of Rick, where he would say, like, he would use 5 adjectives and with varies. It was very nice and very exciting and very, whatever. And
we
that
have
was your
very high hopes for next season.
Yes, and I think they're going to be very popular, and people are going to be very intrigued by this and enjoy it a lot. And that we do. No, it's Akiva Goldsman said something the other day about we've got a 3-season plan and a 5-season plan. But what he's kind of nicely talking about there is people, anything can happen. But right now the sky's the limit. Right now everybody is in love with the show. The show is golden. CBS loves it. Most of the fan base is in love with it. Still reserving the right to critique it, but it's obviously on all cylinders. Some of us are waiting on the Shabab and Larissa, not Larissa.
Oh, Laris and Jaban. I really want a Laris and Jaban.
The Romulans. I want the spin-off Romulan show with Laris and Jaban. Yeah,
the Irish Romulan and the stubborn Northern
Jaban. Yes, the French Irish Romulan. Yeah. Which was I'll say that. No, but this whole thing is about they don't know what the future holds, just simply because Patrick is in awesome shape. But I almost think it was a little meta, some of the early steps when he's with Dodge and he's panting running up the stairs, and they played with that a few times, and him on the ship. It was leading up to the moment where he does die, and he's putting his his physical capacity and his mental capacity are going, and Agnes is up there, trying to keep him going long enough to save the day. 5 years. I'm sure everybody involved would love to go 5 years. It would break that kind of quasi-official Netflix mold of running 3 years of the show until it's no longer, the old bean counter thing of they sat down in 1987 and decided that if they had $1.5 million budget for every next gen, we could go 7 years. This budget will account this much for inflation for salaries, and that's it. 26 a year. The strike took away 6 in the second season, but otherwise, and then the same thing for DS9, and mostly the same thing for network UPN, crappy little network UPN. It tweaked, but that was kind of the blueprint. And now we're in a whole different business model, and Netflix is showing the way with after 3 seasons of their short seasons, they apparently, unless it's hugely popular, they'll go 3 years and cut their, that's it. That's where the money makes sense with the budget they're spending. So if they're really spending $8-9 million, an episode on these, and you wind up with an 80, you realize that after 10 hours, you've spent, 80 or 90 million. And that's what the budgets on a next gen, a single next gen movie was that much. We should figure that up and measure that in your dollars. Mm-hmm. Just saying, part of what we're this whole discussion about how long the show will run, how they're structuring the stories, is in the uncomfortable real world fact of Patrick, Sir Patrick, and his age and his condition. And he's in wonderful health right now, but we just, as we have seen last year, we never know what's coming down the next month.
This year, we don't know for anyone.
Yes, exactly.
What could happen? So, I see. Okay. Well, let's move on to another quick. Well, you said you had like 2 points you wanted to.
Well, I kind of joked about one of them, but I think I've said this before, and I think they've kind of been on the record, and I can't wait to ask myself. But the way I got the idea that coming out of the gate, Spock and Ethan Peck was supposed to be the big story for Discovery Season 2, and everybody loved Anson Mount, and they were excited about having Pike, but I don't think CBS had any clue that they were about to get. They were so used to trying to tamp down the negativity around Discovery that the fact that they had a love fest going on when this character exploded and the actor portraying it and everything fit physically and emotionally and Anson had been an old fan, a kid fan, that always helps. And I don't think they were quite, they'll take it, but I think they were surprised and blown away with the reaction. And even, to be honest, eclipsing the reaction to Ethan and Spock.
Oh, by far. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So good on them and we may have time to talk about this, good on them for the whole saga that's now developed around the Pike show and Strange New Worlds and all that. But that whole reaction is very telling in a lot of ways to the good. But I don't know. I was kidding about it. I don't know if anybody was ready for, and maybe not everybody was, but oh my God, Orla Brady and Laris.
Oh, yeah.
And what she did with that part and the role and what she brought to it. And people were kidding about, we were kidding about the Irish Romulans, but it just felt like, I don't know. I know some people were kind of chomping at the bit after 1 and 2 hours and 3 hours going, when are we going to space? When are we going to space? When are we going to space? And I was like, if they just run around and solve mysteries and crimes on Earth, I could almost go for that. I could almost go for the Jabin and Laris show, whether Sir Patrick is there or not. Now, I'm kidding. And I was disappointed that somehow they didn't circle back to them, at least get them in. I remember thinking at the end of the 3rd episode now we're into space now, guys. You can all relax. We are now in space with Star Trek. I'm thinking, well, surely they're going to loop back to Earth or bring them in or shuttle them in or warp them in or vortex them in or do something.
They could have been holograms in the emergency hospitality holograms recreation of Chateau Picard.
And by 100 years later, of course, they would know where the furniture was on the other end of the holo viewer. They'd be able to completely go in and sit down on the chair that's not really where they are. No, but they didn't. I mean, that was a little disappointment. And I think it was cute to see that rise up on the boards, internets, and tweets and everything too. Other people had that same attitude. But I'll say this. So here's my biggest critique. And I know she has a fan base. Peyton List has a big fan base out there. Very attractive. And I thankfully, the bright spot to me in the finale, even though they kind of wound up being, and Narissa and Nemecek, all kind of in the end wound up being, I hate to say it, token villains. But to me, the biggest waste of time for the season was all the unending dark, I don't know if they were like last minute ads and they decided to get 4 or 5 pieces of, and I have friends that are working in the art department, so I'm not knocking anybody, but some of those scenes where they put a fan in the back in the dark and shot silhouetted light coming out and they put 4 or 5 flats that look like they're trying to be close-ups of Borg walls. And they would just have Nemecek walking along a corridor and all of a sudden Narissa jumps out at him so she can hiss at him in that kind of dark, teen, villainous, angsty, WB way. I just, and for the 9 millionth time, it's like she hisses at him and he stalls for time and she hisses at him again and she stalks around him and he counter stalks and then he hisses back at her and it's like, so leave me alone. I'm getting on with the plan. Your plan is too slow. No, my plan is the only plan that will work. And it was like, okay, for the 9th time, I mean, I thought her very first scenes with O at least made sense. And, look, she's an undercover. Okay, if she's at least human and not trying to be, a Vulcan as a Romulan. Well, that's original. But she was at least going, they actually had to bob her ears with plastic. And then the very end, where she had some other things to do and felt like she actually, but for that whole middle half of the stretch, those scenes on the Borg cube, their scenes on the Borg cube were just like a total waste of time.
Yeah.
How many more times is she going to hiss at him and he's going to put her off? And it's okay. Here's the scene in the show where they talk about how she's mad at him and he's saying, I'm working on it. And
well, I mean, I agree with you in that I did not like the character. The actress is fine, but I didn't like the character. Right. And I thought that whole Romulan.
I don't know what she could have done with that. I mean, I feel sorry for her. And I know she's got like I said, I know she's got a fan base and she's done some other great things. I just thought it was a thankless task.
Right. And it's the same with Tamlin Tomita playing O. I felt bad for her actually in the face-off between the two fleets. Because the lines that she was delivering, the writing was horrific. No one would speak that way. And I know you can say, hey, Chris, how do you know no one would speak that way? But really, listen to how you can tell that she's doing her very best as an actress to deliver
Yes.
the material that she has been given. So bless her. I appreciate her as an actress. But the material was horrible, and she was just like generic villain that has to be there to give Riker a hard time because they did nothing to develop her character. And it was the same with Narissa. There's nothing to these Romulan characters. Now, the one defense that you say it's a complete waste of time, I think the point of Narissa's scenes are actually to develop Nerek's character, and he does a pretty good job. Like after he leaves the room in the impossible box, and he leaves Soji in the room, and he sets off the radiation.
Oh, he is. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, he does a great job of expressing the fact that he might be on a mission, Narissa's mission, but I think he does care about Soji.
Yes, and you get those hints, and I felt a little toyed with, but there is at least, you have a feeling like, oh my God, in the end, is he gonna be the villain that's suckered over to be with the good guys? Which he kind of is, but you kind of saw it telegraphed all the way along. Yeah,
it's kind of a problem in the writing of all of these modern shows. A lot of stuff's telegraphed, but I think that, and then he does come back at the end. He's out there throwing the rocks at the ship and all. I think that the point of all those scenes with Narissa are to try to grow his character,
to service
and
him,
his
not
connection to Soji.
Yes,
but when you only have 10 episodes, and this goes back to what I was saying at the start of our discussion, it's a waste of time. There has to be another way, or a more efficient way, or you have to make us care about Narissa for that to work. The way it's presented, it's almost like we have this Star Trek story going on, and then we've got this other, like Game of Thrones or something, like thrown in, where because it's almost like she wants to have sex with her brother so often. And I know some people have said they didn't pick up on that, but a lot of other people have said that they did pick up on that.
I called them the Romulan incest twins. Yeah.
And it's just weird. It's bizarre for the story. Maybe you can tell a different story where that makes complete sense. So I'm not getting off on like, this is some idea that just can't work in fiction somehow. But in the context of this story, it just feels like a waste of time when there are other elements that you feel like are being shortchanged. Why are we having all of these,
including her? Now, I said I think the one bit she got to chew on was the very beginning, the introduction of her, and then at the very end. The very end. And I'm not just talking about the fight scene with Seven, but she actually had some moments there that made sense. But that whole middle thing where all she's doing is just snarling at him and walking in and out of shadows, like just popping out like it's some back alley, except we're on a board cube.
And that's why I feel like that was all meant to be in service of Nerek's character development.
And Nemecek, at least, of course, had Soji to triangulate off of, and he had, and then by the end, he had everybody to play off of. But she was stuck with basically him. After she lost O in the office, all she had was him until the very end.
Right.
And it's thankless. And I wish they had found ways to do right by her, or do better by it. That was going to be the flow of things. And not just, it felt like it was the token angsty teen Gen Z, we have to do this so we look like, I don't know, a DC superhero show on the CW or whatever.
Well, I feel like in the writing of Discovery and Picard both, it is a little bit of that. I feel like the writers feel like they have to draw on these modern tropes and cliches and ways of storytelling, and that they have to work that in, like somehow the audience is expecting it. And personally, I would rather just see a division there. Like, this is Star Trek. We're going to tell a certain type of story here, and we don't need that element.
Just unless
it really is needed for the story. And then you find a way to make it work better.
Just go do Starfleet Academy 90210 and just, finally get on with it, which is, been announced. It's out there. They've even named, the producers attached to it. But,
So, of course, Larry, what we're missing is the fact that it hasn't been announced yet, but there's yet another Star Trek spin-off series coming, which is just focuses on the Romulans. It's just O and Nemecek, and it's Narissa. Somehow she's come back as well, and it's just going to be all about them and the plan. They're going to continue the plan. So it's going to be called Star Trek: The Plan.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be Star Trek Dark Romulans or something.
Yeah, featuring the three of them.
Yeah. Star Trek Romulans in the Shadows.
And Tomalak's going to pop up. He's going to be like the guest.
In an android body. Yeah.
In an android body, but he's always going to be on a view screen a little bit too close and in your face. So to kind of close out discussion of Picard, the other point I wanted to ask you about, because we like to talk about the business side, is just in the context of the franchise. Like, what do you feel that Picard has done for the franchise in terms of the efforts that CBS has undertaken to revive Star Trek, to make it more vibrant, to make it viable for the long term?
Well, I think, yes. And quickly on its heels is going to be the animated series and then the Pike show, Strange New Worlds, and then on beyond that. There are more coming. But what it's done, and I think a lot of fandom doesn't get this. I think if people are really, really, really stuck on the Alex Kurtzman has been cursed ever since he touched Star Trek 09. I'll never trust anything he does, yada, yada. And every time I say that, I'm not taking away anybody's right to critique something, but this broad brush, right? I don't like anything post-Discovery. I love the people that find a difference between the Kelvin movies and these, which there are, but people, it's like the minute we got cinematic, I think ever since we left 2005, and 2005 was, they were digitally shooting, but it was really an evolved version of 1987. We had the 12-year, we had just a few years gap. And 09 had a movie budget and all that, but it was a completely different take on how to produce the series. And so people lump the Kelvin movies in with the TV now and whatever, but it's such a cinematic looking difference that people lump all that in for the same tone and makers and all that, when it's really just kind of the modern era of here's the way budgets and business models for movies and TV series are done. But it carries over to the fact that so many people are lumping Picard and Discovery together. And I'm like, whoa. They have critiqued them each separately, but they're totally different critters. And I think Alex Kurtzman had he said, we think of Picard as a sci-fi drama and Discovery as sci-fi action, which not without its tone, its themes and it's all that, but they see a tonal shift there. And I think a lot of fandom, until we get 3, 4, 5, 6 series out there, I said this somewhere else, it's really like going to be a buffet of Star Treks, and you might like them all. You might like some more than others. You may not care about the animateds at all, or you may love Picard and not. You may finally love Strange New Worlds if it's going to be standalones mainly, 1 or 2 or 3 arcs running, but arcs the way we saw it on Worf is discommendated for all this time, and once a year Troy's mother shows up. Those kind of arcs running. But it'll be a standalone adventure of the week, and, yay, optimism. We get our light at the end of the tunnel comes every hour, not every 10 or 15 hours. And, but it's going to take a while before people get it, that there is a buffet of flavors there. Even as people, the people that are worried about this, or they only see one thing coming down the line, to me, there's already wide differentiation between Picard and Discovery. Even if you don't go to, there's a big differentiation between Discovery season 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 versus season 2 and I think season 3 is going to be I think they may finally get home to what Discovery wound up wanting to be on its own all along without being shoehorned into, Bryan's original idea of being an anthology series that has a different season plot. And CBS is like, no, we're going to spend the money. Let's keep these characters in these roles, but all of that angst and growth and planning and not planning and execution, Discovery is what it is, even though it keeps evolving. And Picard's a different flavor, and the fandom that keeps sticking them in the same box, and maybe people can cite reasons, and that's cool. But I'm excited to see what comes down the line, because I think eventually, and maybe fans who are newer to the franchise and not so dyed in the wool, because I think people have forgotten how differently everybody saw, they do, but they don't think it through. How, there was a certain type of fandom that went with Voyager. and a certain type of fandom that glommed onto DS9. On top of the issues about trying to see it on a syndicated show stuck at 2 a.m. on the Hockey Channel locally, or it's UPN and UPN's a crappy little network and it never will have ratings and they're always on the I mean, you know what I mean? It's like there were tones and changes then, and obviously fandom was splitting up. We were never as united as Next Gen's 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th seasons were. Mm-hmm. But it's like that's all been completely, by the time Enterprise was on, half the world didn't care. They weren't even paying attention. Yeah. Or there was so much competition from all the sci-fi and fantasy that Star Trek had helped create as a popularity boom. But people forget that, but we're about to put that on steroids. That whole thing about here's different flavors, here's different tones. Mm-hmm. And, nobody thought anything weird about not liking. You either had to like it all or not like any of it. In the Berman era, that wasn't an issue. Yeah. And people are looking at that now. But by the time we roll out all these shows and we get to the animateds, and then we have 2 totally different tones of animation. Mm-hmm. We have one that's kind of the Adult Swim of it, and then we have one that's kind of more angsty not anime strictly, but angsty teen anime-ish with Prodigy or what, hashtag Nick Trek, whatever they wind up calling it. Mm-hmm. By the time all that becomes apparent, I think we'll be beyond this whole discussion. Just the way we finally stop talking about whether paying for Star Trek is a sin against God or not.
Have we stopped talking about that?
Well, still.
Well, yeah, I think overall you're right.
Hey, you wanted meta big picture, so there you go.
But I'm a little bit skeptical about your prediction that we'll get past all of this, because there's nothing about social media that makes me feel that people will get past of anything these days.
Well, they'll get past this. There'll be something new in 2 or 3 years, but we'll at least be past that.
Fandom, just whether it's Star Trek fandom or Star Wars fandom or whatever fandom, people just seem to be very upset about things these days, and it seems like some kind of strange form of enjoyment for many of them. So I know if we'll get past that.
I don't know. Maybe somewhere between a pandemic and everything else going on in the world, maybe we'll have a cleansing. Maybe people will come to appreciate their commonalities and not what divides us. But
so let's talk about Strange New Worlds, because you mentioned a moment ago when we were talking about the setup of how things went in Picard and how off guard maybe the studio was caught when everyone fell in love with Anson Mount as Captain Pike. I know I did right off the bat.
I know I did. Yeah.
I couldn't believe, and I thought that going in, I thought Pike's probably going to be a small part of the season. And there's even that setup in the beginning where he says, Saru and I, it's going to be like a joint custody kind of deal, it's going to, well, it certainly didn't end up being that way. It's very much Pike, but his portrayal of Pike was just so spot on, I think, for the character, but also for what we expect a Starfleet captain to be. And it seemed very clear to me why everyone fell in love with him. And I know by the middle of the season, I was saying, I really want a Pike series with Anson Mount as the captain.
You and 47 million other people, yeah.
I thought that Ethan Peck did a great job with Spock. We don't really get to see him until well into the season very much. We get to hear his voice, and we get the great Spock chase. Oh my God, we've caught Spock now, but no, we haven't. Gotcha again. Tune in next week and see if we can catch Spock this time.
You know what would have made season 2 Discovery even better? If Narissa had kept jumping out of the shadows going, when are you going to get Spock? When are you going to get Spock? We're working on it. You're not moving fast enough.
That would have been awesome. And then we could find out that actually Narissa works for Section 31.
And she's time traveling back and forth. Yeah.
That would have made wonderful sense.
She has the green-black suit, and she's hopping around in it. Yeah.
She's the Green Angel, right? We've got the Red Angel. We've got the Gray Angel. And now we've got the Green Angel.
Green Angel, will you be mine? Yeah. Okay.
So, but once we really got Spock on the show, I really like what Peck did with Spock. It was in no way an imitation of Leonard Nimoy as Spock. it really felt like a younger version of Spock, and you could see it felt like the same person finding himself, growing into the Spock that we meet later. I thought it was brilliantly done.
You could totally see him being shouty Spock in the cage. Yes,
and there is that great moment.
And there is
in the Q&A short trek.
Yes, and
no need to shout.
Yes, yeah. It was a great shout out to that homage to Spock.
That was quite nice. Yeah. And so
when they announced his casting, and they said he was the grandson of Gregory Peck.
Oh,
and
right.
I just went, oh my God. And when I first heard him interviewed and talking, but even in the moment, I thought, well, no, it didn't occur to me. And then when he talked, I was like, oh my God, he's got his granddad's voice. And Gregory Peck had that resonant, not bass, but a lower baritone bass-ish voice. And it's like, yes, you can pull off the Leonard Nimoy resonant, baritone really well too. I'm just like, oh, this is the casting continues to be, some of the best parts of any new Trek.
Yeah,
I mean, all three of those. And when they were first running the ensign mount side by sides, and even Rebecca Romaine, once they get her into the hair and all that, can pull off a little bit of a major Tony Curl bounce hair bit thing there.
So I'm very glad the studio pulled the trigger on this show, and they're actually going to make it. I like you said earlier, I think going in to season 2 Discovery, I really doubt they had any plans for any kind of TV show set in that time period with the Enterprise. But great that they're reacting to what the fans have connected with. And I think the cast is going to be wonderful, and we're going to get to see, maybe some familiar characters come back. Maybe they can bring, maybe we'll get Yeoman Colt back.
I was going to say,
something like that.
I just want Yeoman Colt to pull off her Scooby-Doo mask and go, ha ha, kids, just kidding. I really was human all along. Yeah.
Right. So
yeah,
I think that's going to be really fun. What I'm curious about is what you hope the series will be, because I'll tell you up front what I hope it's going to be is I hope that they're going to break with the modern TV format and actually give us episodic Star Trek again.
I think they're saying that. I think they've said that. There were code words in the day one. Yeah.
Yeah. And for it to be optimistic again.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm fine with the types of stories that they tell on Discovery and Picard. And I know that's how TV is these days, but I would love, I think the Orville has shown that there is an audience for a more traditional episodic science fiction show. And if we're going to have all of these different flavors of Star Trek, then I think it would be fine for them to give us that. And it would certainly fit well with the idea of Pike's mission on the Enterprise.
Yeah, it's going to be like if you do a meme on Uhura's line from Galileo 7, which is one of the lines I love to quote all the time. It's a big smorgasbord, Mr. Scott. I mean, it's like, when people, I think it's going to take a while. I think people feel like they either feel burnt, like I said a long time ago, unless it's just an absolute, someone's being negative for a paycheck, they're just trolling or it's a bot. I will always relish anyone, their critique, their opinion and all that. If it's a real person with a real heartfelt, even though it may seem bizarre, as long as they're hopefully civil. But, if
civility is important.
Yes, civility is important. I'm not excusing bad behavior, but as far as an actual opinion, well said, I think that's great because everything is so, we talked about making Trigger happy and how divided and tribalized and everything is. The commonality still is that people care about this franchise, this show, wherever they came to it. Something keeps attracting people. I was talking to somebody, one of my portales that I've known for a few years now, was talking about she was just checking out at a pharmacy or a grocery store, and she had something of Star Trek on, and they recognized, a young guy, like in his early 20s, working the checker, recognized it. And he's like, it was something that transcended, I don't know if it was a Delta or whatever it was, but transcended the shows, and they started talking, and she had to tell me, she tweeted it, but then she had to tell me specifically. She's like, look, I found someone who came to Star Trek with He loves Discovery and he loves Picard, and he's not seen any other Trek yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like he was like, oh, I don't know, I can't. They're too old for me. I can't get into that. It's too painful for me to watch that 60s acting. Or none of that was there. He didn't know that there was Star Trek before Picard and Discovery. I was like, oh my God, I would love to. Can I have a Petri dish and I'll start one and having those be. I love to talk about a sociology experiment in fandom. And then to show them like, oh no, we got to curate this. What are we going to show them first, and what era and what show? But that's a fact that's going to keep happening more and more. You know, it's just like the Kelvin fans coming out of the blue when the established fandom, you know, tissed all the things that were clunky and goofy about the movies. And there were plenty, but they were well done on the surface and brought in a ton of fans and kept Star Trek going during the fallow years. So, you know, we've had that discussion before, but we're going to have an ongoing, you know, still we're going to have this mix of people coming in. And the other thing about the Pike show, I said this in jest when people were seeing Discovery unspool, and then the second season was still a little bit better, and some people were moved to go, okay, this is more like it. Okay, well, Star Trek, they never get good until the third season, ha ha ha. You know, when all those memes kicked in, but you still had everybody, either they did not like touchscreens and hologram viewers, or they did not like Alex Kurtzman, or whatever it was, or I've been forever burned, I'll never get over this. You know, seeing the crack, seeing the ray of light come down, and people starting to get it. And it's gonna happen more and more. And the Pike show for people, I said at the time, look, if nothing else, they're competing in the world of Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead and all these angsty shows that are out there and this dystopian view. I know it. You probably know it. I say this from time to time. If somebody had the wherewithal to jump up and do an original series or a next generation shiny, happy crew in a shiny, happy bridge on a shiny, happy ship having shiny, happy adventures with dramatic, I'm not saying it's bland and stupid, but Pollyanna. But you know what I'm saying? Versus Discovery. We know that we still like that, but that feels like it may be a bridge too far given the world they think they're supposed to attract an audience in. And when some brave soul, either a fanboy or girl, has enough clout and they get the keys, whether it's under Alex or on a sidebar or what, and they do a show and it breaks through, that'll be awesome. But I don't think that's going to happen. What will happen is as they keep rolling out new shows, and by then we knew what the pattern was. We didn't know what they were. I said, watch this. So we've got, you know, Discovery, Picard, we have two, and by the time we get to, show 6 or 7, somebody in the think tank at the moment is going to jump up and say, I know what we can do for a new show. How about we have a bright, shiny, happy crew and a bright, shiny ship with bright, shiny adventures? That'll be radical. That'll get some attention, and everybody will go, yeah. And 2 or 3 of the wise fanboys in the corner of the room will say, yeah, let's do that. That's new and radical. And the rest of us will do the Wrath of Khan line. Now that's more like it. You know, but it's like, you know, guys, so hang in there. They may just have to work through this and get this out of their system, but we'll get there. And then lo and behold, the day they announced Strange New Worlds finally, and Anson Mount is saying, you know, I just want to let you guys know, I am looking forward to giving you Star Trek that's optimistic and future looking. It's like he was dropping those code words. He didn't say old-fashioned Star Trek, but he said something like getting back. I don't have the quote handy. Getting back to Star Trek that is optimistic and forward-looking. And I went, I wonder if those are code words for wink, wink. We're going to give you old-fashioned Star Trek, which is what everybody always thought Star Trek was anyway, not old-fashioned. That's what it was. Although you can make a case for DS9, you know, the darker, grittier show was darker and grittier, but people, that's all getting, you know, glossed over now. So you know, that was, the day that came out, I thought, wait a minute. And I started counting up. Okay, you've got Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, the other animation. You got Section 31. Oh, look, this is show number 6. I was right 2 years ago.
Right, exactly.
See? This is the radical new happy show coming. So anyway, all that to say that I can't wait to see how it goes and looks like. And yeah.
Well, you were right, but I hope that the other guy that was sitting in the back of the room that raised his hand and said, "And we can have boy bands play on the ship." I hope that he does not turn out to be right.
What's weird is how the unemployment line for ex-UPN studio executives was crossing the front door of that same room. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So
boy bands.
So that's Strange New World. I'm looking forward to finding out more about the series as it's developed.
Oh, you didn't mention anything about whether Jeffrey Combs should play Dr. Boyce.
Ah, yeah, I do remember that story. It
was fun for the moment. We're filling in dead time, so yeah.
I'm always game for Jeffrey Combs playing any character. So I love Jeffrey Combs.
Can Jeffrey Combs play this computer monitor? Can he be a chair? Can he? Yeah, he could, and we'd love it. Yeah.
So yeah, I would love that if they brought him on. He's been great in everything. I loved his role on the 4400 where he had that connection back to Star Trek, and they brought him in. And
one better, one of my campaigns, one of my soapboxes, and I did this with Harry Judge at Vegas last year. Was we came up with the hashtag Time for Teller Prime. How about in Strange New Worlds, they let Jeffrey Combs play Boyce and also play the new recurring Tellarite character finally.
Exactly.
Doesn't that? Yes.
And Yeoman Colt.
Once she takes her alien head off and looks human again. Yeah, I think he can handle all of that and more.
And then underneath that human look is Jeffrey Combs. But it doesn't quite look like Jeffrey Combs, right? So Jeffrey Combs is playing the human that's underneath the current Yeoman Colt alien headgear. Yeah.
Who looks a lot like Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Colt.
Edgar Allan Colt, yeah. Check it out. It's a descendant of Poe. Right.
All right. So we've run down Picard a little bit on Strange New Worlds, and then we talked a little about the other series that are to come. So I think we've covered kind of like everything that we had on our outline for today. Is there anything else you feel like we must touch on at this point in time on the Ready Room?
I don't, except that I think the Klingons will sing songs someday of the battle of the Discovery crew, of the post crew, trying to record the last few episodes soundtracks in separate. I mean, horrible situations push technology to revolutionize, and so much of the show could be done. The editors, the CGI people, the writers can all be. The only thing that's actually slowed down and starting the new season of Picard, much less the startup of Strange New Worlds, is, and of course the animateds are all people sitting down at desks too. Whether they're together or not, they can at least do that all, and the voiceover people can record theirs separately, so they're not really harmed at all by this. Well, in some ways, it's a little slower, I'm sure, but how we're reacting to the pandemic and all of this, and Hollywood, not to get political here, all this struggling with how to come back from the pandemic and all this empty debate about when businesses would open up, and nobody forgot to invite, consumers to the party on that. And they're all kind of voting with their not feet. Yeah. But the most of all, the entertainment industry and the whole issue of, they've had, and just to say here from LA, they've had the governor here in California, Newsom, and all the industry people and union people and management and producers. They've been having these meetings along, and they're trying to come up with ways to reopen and get people their show, all the different kinds of, there's reality shows and soap operas and game shows and 1 hour dramas and sitcoms on a stage and all the different, all those different kinds of formats and the way people interact. But you still get down to people not 6 feet apart talking to each other. You want to recreate that. It's more complicated than they've come out with some things like, oh, look, craft service will now give you your donuts in individual containers and not, off a plate. Well, that's the easy stuff. This other is still there. And no one, crew, actors, no one is stampeding back anytime soon, short of a vaccine or something. It's the same as consumers in stores. So this whole thing about how long we're going to have to wait for, wrapping up Discovery will be one thing, but how long we finally get to see season, which is sad. The clock is ticking on a lot of things here. And the delays we're all putting up with delays, and it's affecting people's lives and pocketbooks and everything, our psyches. But, as far as us selfishly in our little Trek circle here in Trekland, it's affecting that too. And we're just going to have to wait. But how they're wrapping up and individually recording, instrumentalists to get the soundtrack done someday, I hope CBS is documenting the hell out of that, however they can do it, for future.
Well, I mean, it can be done. I have friends who are recording artists and, classical, like orchestral recording artists, and it's something that's done, but it's not the normal way of doing things. And so, obviously,
and we're talking 30, 40, 50 piece orchestra for the major pieces.
Yeah.
That's...
But, there are always opportunities and challenges, Larry. And for the 7th Star Trek series, Star Trek 6 Feet Apart, it's like, it's the perfect opportunity for this series. It's timely. We're already under the prime conditions for shooting it because people need to be 6 feet apart. I mean, the bridge. You remember the Vengeance and Into Darkness, how big that ship was? Yeah. It's like that kind of bridge, so there's enough space for everyone to be 6 feet apart.
I'm sorry, Chris. How is that different than any bridge since 2009? It's like it's like cinematic Trek means you can drive tractors across the bridges now. Right. You could. No, I'm just waiting for your new show. I can see there'll be a moment of tension in every episode. Captain, we're losing integrity on the socially distanced field. What?
Yeah, exactly. Captain, I'm sorry. We have a vinyl collapse on deck 4. A vinyl collapse on deck 4. Force fields activate immediately, please.
Something's gone wrong with the distance dampers. I cannot explain it, sir. That'll be mark my words. The distance dampers. That'll be there. And by the way,
that will be there.
It's distance dampers, not distance dampeners, because that would be water, and that would be silly.
And also, there'll be an episode like Shuttle Pod 1, except the 2 crew members will be in quarantine for 14 parsecs.
Days.
I don't 14. Know. They're going to be in quarantine together. I
don't know. Chris,
sheltering in place in the shuttle pod.
Chris, maybe it's time we go into quarantine.
I think so. I've already been through a 14-day quarantine because of this, like a legitimate 14-day quarantine plus the 3 months of staying at home. But anyway, yes, we're getting a bit silly now. But
now?
Yeah, we don't know when we will see Star Trek Strange New Worlds, obviously, because they will need to shoot it. But thankfully for Discovery, I think all the footage is shot, right? We've got to figure out how to get the music in there and the rest of the post done. And that will probably be out before too terribly much longer, I think. All right. So, Larry, I always ask you at the end of the Ready Room, what do you have coming up? Where are you going and all that? Obviously, you're not going many places anytime soon, but you do have a lot going on.
Well, I have been going places in the sanity or the insanctity of my mind because we've all switched to virtual, and I've been talking a lot about that on Tuesdays at Tuesdays Live on my Facebook hour at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday on my Facebook page, Larry Nemecek Trekland. That's been interesting. But the virtual panels have been, there was a convention recently that vendors organized. People are keeping up right now with the GalaxyCon in Florida. They're putting out things, agents. There was like this, I talked about this in March. I kind of it was like, oh my God, once Emerald City Comic-Con in Seattle went down and then WonderCon the next week. And I was like, well, this will get us at least into summer. And the unthinkable was going to keep happening. Yes, your local convention was not going to happen this year. Yes, even Granddaddy's San Diego Comic-Con was not going to happen this year. Yes, it took a while. It finally happened 2 or 3 weeks ago. But yes, Star Trek Las Vegas is not going to happen this year. So, whether the early ones tried to postpone to fall, and then after a month or two, they're like, well, that's just silly. We're not even going to mess with postponements. This isn't going to happen. We're just going to skip the year. This will be the year of the COVID. This will be the Corona crazy year, and we'll just come back in 2021. But, I said, one of my topics one Tuesday was, will virtual save fandom? And that's kind of where we are. Not just fandom sanity, but, actors and guests and agents and vendors' income streams. Because a lot of people, as with other industries, the live event industry and our conventions are hurt really bad. So kudos for everybody for stepping up in this. We all got Zoomified or whatever we're using, and it applied to this too. But in the rush to get actors talking to people, and a lot of it free with, upsells, you can add on people. But a lot of things are, the silver lining there is that people are getting to go that never got to go to a convention before. And they're getting, some of these rooms, you see people kind of squeeing like it's 1984 and they're going to their first convention because they're 12. Only now they're 50 and they've never gotten to go before, had the wherewithal. So it's amazing. And I keep wondering how much of this residual is going to carry forward once we are quote unquote normal and live again. But in the middle of all this, some vendors got together. The folks at Science, Kayla and Jake at Science Division that do the automated tribbles that are licensed, got together and did a convention online called Connected Community Con 2-3 weeks ago. But it was mainly the vendors, and we had virtual vendors rooms. Everybody had a Zoom room, and there was a list of the links, and you could quote, walk virtually and talk to people in the different rooms. And they had, and Alexander Sidid did a welcome, and then we there were some panels. Allie T. Truckee on Twitter, she did a panel. I did some after party trivia. There was a musician. But this whole experience, you said, what are you doing? All the travel is shut down. There are these things are popping up. And I just, so Granddaddy San Diego Comic-Con, as I call it, is put out a call for, you could pitch pre-recorded panels. So no live, no interaction, but I recorded a panel for them that's going to be 3 generations of science advisors, which is what I was going to pitch live, and it wound up going this way. So we have Narain Shankar and Andre Bormanis and Dr. Aaron McDonald, the last 3 titled formal science advisors on episodic Star Trek TV, all 3 of them, starting with 5th season Next Generation till now. We had a panel pre-recorded, which was awesome. So I moderated and got them through that. And that's coming. But all these virtual things, I just did one day. My friends Neil and Jaina did a Comic-Con one, and we had some Trek people in, and we did that today. So I've started and stopped one project for the COVID times called Nonfiction Friday, but we had our last episode. But I'm very proud, since I talked to you, Dr. Ali Matu, who some folks have seen around. He did some Comic-Con bits with Dr.
He's a real doctor, right, Larry?
You're way ahead of me, Chris. Apparently our reputation has preceded us. But yes, so Dr. Ali and I started a failed panel from WonderCon, a canceled panel from canceled WonderCon. We were going to talk about mental health in Picard. I don't know if you noticed this, but there were a lot of mental health cases. Yeah. We didn't even talk about that a while ago.
What was the broken pieces? I mean, it's the name of an episode, right? But those are the characters of the show. Yeah. But we decided to turn it into a lost panel, turn it into a series, and I'll just invite everybody. It's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. British summertime, 7 Central European summertime. You figure out what your time is there, but Dr. Ali. What's that Enterprise ship time, Larry?
It's 4700 in Stardate hours of a fraction of a percent, if you must ask.
Yeah.
No, we call it our mission is boldly going through uncertain times, and it's Star Trek with a mental health lens. And before you get scared and spooked by that, it's very light. We have a lot of fun with it. We have Star Trek examples. We have a different theme. We let people on the Facebook page help us vote the theme every week. So go to Life Support Live on Facebook. We multi-stream it, so we're on live on Facebook, which is where the most chat community is, and then YouTube. So I'm building up my YouTube channel. So at the same time, I say, hey, everybody, come by, watch us. You can chat. You can get on Skype and be on camera with us at that time. Every week we have a different theme. We go to Star Trek references. But Ali winds up doing some real-world notes, and he does as a counselor's log, and then we have an away mission. After we start off with a briefing room, we go through all the Star Trek things, the Star Trek references that fit. Then we go there. And I started a feature I call the K3 Factor, which is I do a real deep, a Trekland Portal 47 type deep dive that connects some real deep dive Star Trek geekery trivia behind the scenes with our topic, our theme of the week, whether it's anxiety or sleep issues or prejudice or gatekeeping or guilt. I mean, some aspect but we make it applicable to everybody in their daily lives. So yeah, the tagline is boldly going through uncertain times, and it's interactive, and it's growing, and we've got big plans for it, and it'll still be a camera show, but we're going to start releasing, because they're a little long, we're going to release them as podcasts too, as audio, because they work just fine as audio. So that's been a big push. That I enjoyed doing Nonfiction Friday, but we decided to pause on it. And of course, I've got a YouTube channel now, so if everybody can go by and, as they say, ring the bells, like and subscribe, just Larry Nemecek on YouTube. It would be awesome, guys. I'm way behind on building that up, and I would love all the help getting the viewer subscribers up. Of course, Portal 47 is still out there, and anybody listening, I have a Corona Time Portal 47 special. If you go to my LarryNemecek.com page, click on the link, or just go to portal47.net. It's a short time. Not a whole year. It's a short time, 3 months for the price of 2. But you can get in and get a free month and see what it's all about and not commit, because I don't know if you noticed, Chris, it's kind of crazy out there. No one quite knows what's even going to happen next month, much less 3 months from now or 6 months from now. So, that's where I've been. I feel like I've worked harder the last 2 or 3 months and got less sleep through stress or work or otherwise than I have the 3 years before. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I know you've been working your tail off and trying to keep up with things. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mentioned earlier in the show that I, lost my job, my contract, because of this, but I still do the magazines as a freelancer, and because of budget cuts to freelance writers and stuff, I've worked probably 3 times harder, like more hours in the past 3 months than I normally would. And it has taken quite a toll on my mental health. So maybe I need to come talk to you and Dr. Ivy about that. But,
you're welcome anytime. Yeah.
But it's crazy right now, and no one knows what is going to happen a month from now, or certainly further out than that. It's just everything's so uncertain. But it has been very wonderful to see the Star Trek actors and the creators connect with the fan base the way that they have during this time. I mean, these panels with the casts of different shows. Kate Mulgrew was doing this thing where she would get on and talk to fans. I think she's doing the last one maybe this past week or next week.
She was like, they have a draw for 6 people, and they all be in their little sort. Yeah.
And I mean, it's amazing, because that's the kind of thing that maybe would never have happened if not for something like this, because once everyone is isolated and we're not able to see each other face to face, and many people find extra time on their hands because they're not able to do the things they would normally do. Not everyone's inundated with extra work, although many people are. These new ideas for things come up, and that maybe you would have never had time to think of before. And I have seen so much great stuff within our fandom, within Star Trek fandom, connecting fans with the creators and those who portray the characters that we love. So that's been wonderful. It's, one of the positives of what's going on, which we need to find, because there aren't a lot of positives, but at least there are some.
Right. And I mentioned this earlier on too, was imagine if we'd had this pandemic 10 or 15 years ago, when we're still fairly modern, maybe we'd all be like madly emailing each other. I mean, this at least being able to have these, virtual panels and virtual conventions, and this contact, forget fans and actors, just our friends, just our daily circle of people, we're still able to connect. Hopefully, people think, and I think, sadly, the world is coming to grips with those who felt like the big thing was to push forward. It's just made the pandemic response worse, here in the States anyway. Most of the rest of the world that were smaller countries and maybe a little more compact, and I don't want to make excuses, but it's a factor, but whatever. Yeah. It's like, no, I mean, we were sitting here thinking, I don't care what they say. We're not, my wife's working at home. They're not in any rush to go back. Do most of my work at home, and we've got this virtual component we can work through. Can
you imagine if it were 20 years ago, before broadband was widespread? I really don't know how society would continue functioning.
I don't know how people would, how we would have kept our sanity.
We are very lucky that we do have
to
this
degree.
Infrastructure now that works well, and we're able to keep going. So
it was under a lot of stress at the beginning, and to their credit, all the streaming companies and digital companies jumped into Up the Grid. And and if you happen to be connected to an app like Zoom or whatever it was called and spelled lately, people were jumping in to upgrade, and all the competitors to upgrade that capacity too, and meet the chamber what Zoom bombing was. And you'll forever remember the first, because as you said, a lot of us, I didn't do business through Zoom, but I have had a lot of training and coaching through. Business coaching through Zoom the last few years, and through free conference call, and through some of the other platforms out there. But so much of the world never heard of any of this until March, and now everybody's an expert.
Yeah, right.
And everybody gets the Saturday Night Live parody, and everybody gets the whatever it is now. And it's how the world has turned and changed is amazing. So that is a silver lining.
I just had this image of Spock from the beginning of the original series, looking at the screen and going, "Up the grid."
Yeah. The audio.
All right. And I think somewhere in there you told people, right, find you on Twitter.
Oh, at Larry Nemecek. Yes,
Nemecek.
That's a simple way. Yes.
And of course, all your Facebook stuff that you talked about. So if you want to find me on Twitter, my username is CBryanJones, letter C, and Bryan with a Y. That's my username everywhere on social media, but I'm mainly active on Twitter. And as for what I have going on, I don't really have much going on in the podcasting space at the moment.
Hey, I was glad to see you tonight, Chris, and hear you.
Yeah, and I was
That's a lot
glad
going
to see you
on
as well, Larry. It's been a while. I mean, we do chat, offline, but we haven't sat down and talked like this in quite a while.
It's kind of hard to smile in Twitter, too. I mean, you can put an emoji down, but the stresses of the world are such that it's, So this is...
Yeah. So, again, I don't know what the next month or 2 or 3 holds, but I hopefully will be podcasting a bit more soon. I have to get work under control, because I always say how stressful and overwhelming my work is, and it's become far worse during this pandemic, but hopefully there will be brighter days ahead. And so we'll see. But I'm glad that at least for tonight, we could get on together and talk about Picard and Strange New Worlds and Star Trek in general. But as much fun as it's been talking about all this, it's not the only thing that we've been discussing on the network this week. So here's a quick look at some other things you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, Literary Treks.
Not wanting to be spoiled about this book, I would suggest then not listening now, read the book, and then come back later, and then you can enjoy the whole freaking feature of this glorious analysis that we're going to give this.
I shot JR. Sorry, I thought we were getting into spoilers. My bad.
I don't know. I just woke up from a dream. I was in the shower.
The Orb.
But if you think about the fact that Sisko is with the Prophets at this time, and Section 31 is going to try to kill the Prophets, maybe that's a way for Sisko to re-enter the story and play his role in representing the Prophets to overturn what Section 31 is trying to do, and to champion that idea of Druidic, and end the season with that message that religion is fine for those who want to believe it, and it's also fine for you not to believe it.
Earl Grey.
One of my notes I made on this episode is that Riker is a cosplayer. He likes to put on the native costumes of the planets he goes to.
Yes.
I have started making a Riker Angel 1 cosplay. Ewan wants it for SLB. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Yes! That was one of my notes as well, was Riker's left nipple.
Doesn't leave much to the imagination, but yeah.
To the journey!
Quick snap poll. Suzanne, would you prefer Neelix to cook for you or Chell?
Chell.
Chell? Zach, Neelix or Chell?
Neelix.
Oh. Oh.
I see Leola root in your future. Lots of it.
Oh, yeah. Give me those exotic ingredients. Yes.
Chell is my man.
I mean, you can have with Chell, you can get like all those pun food items that he made.
Exactly, it would be like Bob's Burgers in space.
Wow.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
So check out all of these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts and also on our website. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. There are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join the larger conversation, of course, is in the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If not, just type the whole name, the Babel Conference, and you'll find it. It is a closed group. You'll need to answer some simple questions. Please do answer the questions so that I can let you into the group. And if you'd like to send email, you can do that. Just go to the website, trek.fm/contact. You'll see the form there. Choose the Ready Room, and that message will come directly to us. And you can also find us on Twitter and on Instagram. Our username on both is TrekFM, and we have a main page on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. And if you'd like to support the show, all the shows on the network help us keep Star Trek discussion coming. We could very, very much use your help, especially at this time, on Patreon. If you visit patreon.com/TrekFM, that's patreon.com/TrekFM, you can get all the details. We have various perks for you. You can become an associate producer. You can join in the Patrons Roundtable, where you get on mic with hosts and other listeners and discuss Star Trek, and other perks. It takes a lot of money to run this network, and we're actually having a bit of a struggle right now. So if you do enjoy our Star Trek discussion, we really could use your help. Please visit patreon.com/TrekFM to find out how. And I really do deeply appreciate all the support that we get. Any support you can give us does help, and I hope you'll join the team. And I'd also like to give a thank you to the associate producers of the Ready Room. These people have given us wonderful support over the years. Norman C. Lau, Renee Roberts, Zachary Fruling, Sam Piasek, Tom Robertson, David Schufer, and Ju Kim. Thank you so much for your help, and I look forward to bringing you many more podcasts in the future. Well, Larry, I'm sorry I've kept you up very late local time for you there in Los Angeles. It's evening here in Tokyo, but it's great that we could talk about Star Trek for a while.
What? Oh, yes.
So you already fell asleep. I knew it.
No, I guess, though, yeah. It's time to stick a Tan Kalank in it, because the Ready Room is done. It's interesting because on one hand, I work at home, but that my time's away, I'd go have lunch with people, or, we'd have meetups somewhere, or I would have work, or I would have an interview somewhere. I mean, I would interview someone or be interviewed or whatever, or we had events here. There are groups in LA, our screenings that we did with the Improv Studio, and we all co-sponsored. Our Trek Files recordings, we did almost all of them live and have the guests come over. We only did 2 of them remotely. Yeah. And, thank God we can do remotes and keep like everyone's doing. And on the other hand, I've led Portal 47. It was this radical, cool new concept to have a group meeting with guests globally online. In 2015, that was pretty radical. And now everyone is Zooming. Now everybody's doing it. And it's still about the content, not the technology. But it's funny to me how, the rest of the world is caught up in a lot of ways, to the point where we even, Saturday Night Live, and we have reunion episodes of shows, and people make fun of but we're past that. That's the other thing. Is every month has been like a generation. That was March and April. And then May was let's open up. And then a lot of us saying, what are you doing? And look at the data. And now the reality of what we're really dealing with is setting in. But it feels like we've gone through a generation of reaction and attitude, every month.
The Zoom thing is interesting, yeah, because everyone is Zoom now. But, we've been using Zoom on Trek FM for about 8 years, I think. 7 or 8 at least. So when we started working with Zoom, they had, I believe, just changed the name to ZOOM because the original spelling was XOOM. I remember an executive there telling me the story, and they, changed the name because I think that name was already used by someone. But that's how far back we go. A
PBS Kids show, if I'm not mistaken, but no one wants to remember that.
Maybe.
No, we're going to zoom. Okay.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a tech product or something that was using it too somewhere. But anyway, people are not here to listen to us talk about Zoom.
Wait.
They are here to listen to us talk about Picard and Star Trek.
Okay, hold on. Let me change my notes then, because I had 5 pages here on Zooming.
Yeah, 5 pages on Zoom. I know. I saw the cover of that notebook, Larry, and I also thought it was weird that you changed the usual Greetings from Trekland poster behind you to one that says Zoom with the big Zoom logo on it, and
yeah, with an X, which I'm a throwback
really bizarre
guy. I'm just a nostalgic.
It's
guy.
classic.
Yeah.
Your original series on that for sure. It's like Zion, know.
Yeah. Our TOZ, as we call it, the original Zoom.
TOZ, yeah.
Actually, it was TOX, but
TOX,
but people confuse that with toxic, and I don't want to go there. Yeah. There's enough toxic out there, but gosh, Chris, maybe we should go in the ready room and start.